Marketing don't really understand what sales are doing, and sales don't really understand what marketing is doing. And the sooner they get on the same page with the same plan, and it's all metrics and it's all being tracked, there's nowhere to hide.
Welcome to the Medical Sales Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Zed Williamson. I want you to imagine you're in sales at a medical device company, and probably the favorite people on the planet are the people in marketing, right? They do so much work that benefits you. You love all the work they do, and they probably love you. They're probably sending you thank you gifts, and you guys get together and hang out and you're best buds because it's all going great. You each help each other, right? Obviously, you hear the sarcasm in my voice, and that's why we're speaking with our guest today, Tamara Loehr. She is the growth advisor and founder of EGS, Enterprise Growth Systems. She's been building and exiting businesses for more than 20 years, and she is a creative, but with a dire thirst for data. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So I'd love to just start with this idea of sales battling marketing. Um, it seems silly because don't we all have the same goal in the end? But so often it feels like these are two silos that consistently battle each other.
Absolutely. It's the blame game, right? Sales argue that marketing is not sending them enough leads. And then marketing says, I have sent you leads, get better at closing. And then there's the whole qualification conversation as well. But the sooner they make up, the better. We all know that sales and marketing needs to be a marriage. And in fact, it's not just top of the funnel and pass it down to, pass it across to a sales team. It's actually woven in throughout the eight-step funnel. So yes, marketing does feed the top of the funnel and it should be positioning a brand so that when the salesperson goes in, they're warm and that door opens a lot easier. And of course, marketing is meant to reduce the sales cycle and increase the conversion rate for the salespeople, but it doesn't stop there. Once the salesperson is in the door, it's also their job, the marketer, to make sure that they're supporting them around objections throughout the sales process to help increase that conversion and reduce that sales cycle. So, mapping that out is really important. And I'm a systems and processes girl. You won't exit companies without good SOPs. And the same applies in marketing and sales. That dance, that eight steps of the two working together as co-parents for sales and for revenue is really important. So making sure that they understand their role in the sales process and when one needs to step up and when the other needs to step up is really important. The sooner you get that and everyone's clear, I think that's the big problem, Zed, is that marketing don't really understand what sales are doing, and sales don't really understand what marketing is doing. And the sooner they get on the same page with the same plan, and it's all metrics and it's all being tracked, there's nowhere to hide. You can't point fingers anymore because you can actually see, oh, it's step three in the funnel that we need to dive into because we're dropping out at this stage. And in step three, marketing's job is this and sales is this, and we look at the data. So again, that whole game of marketing and sales not getting along really is a bit old school. You can track all this stuff now. So let's have a conversation and map it out and have some accountability.
Yeah. The what you mentioned about tracking and what can be known or measured. I think what happens in these roles is from the perspective of sales, everything the salesperson does is easily measured. It is, here is a physician target. They currently don't use our device. I've had a conversation with that physician target. They're using my device. It's this super clear, easy to understand, measurable data. Marketing, it seems like these marketing departments within companies are building up this wall of vanity metrics around themselves. And I think that's where some of this riff comes from because sales feels like you're reporting stuff. I think it's all BS. I'm reporting stuff. It's real. Marketing says, well, you have to understand this is what we can measure and this is considered good. And I think that's where it really starts, where they almost feel like they're both being scored, but they're playing different games.
Yeah, and hence why marketers in our world, kind of having a venture capital background, we say the marketers are at the kiddie table. They don't get invited to the exec table, right? Because they don't earn that right. But good marketers are less creative and more data driven and more metric driven, and really that's been the big shift. In fact, most marketers go straight to creative, straight to vanity metrics. In fact, we need to start with data, and the data then drives the creative, and then we measure the creative based on the data and the output. So it's a different side of the brain. And, generally marketers, they attract that role, attracts creative people, but what we actually need is analytical people, especially with AI. It's all about the tools now and the data. So, when we look at a business, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. We all know that rule. When it comes to marketing, it's really that impressions is vanity, engagement is sanity, and conversion is king. And a conversion is in marketing is booking an appointment for that salesperson or opening that opportunity. And a conversion for sales is actually closing the deal. As soon as the two realize what their roles are, like parents raising kids, but at the moment they're all being teenagers, the sooner they realize that this is parenting and I have a role and you have a role, the better it'll be. But vanity metrics are a waste of time in my idea, in my eyes. I mean, I don't care if you're flush with capital as a medical company or a device company. You need to use that capital wisely and showing me that you've got good brand recognition, not even with your target market. That to me is a waste of time and energy. So, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. No, what always comes to me is imagine being a restaurant owner, excited somebody drove by. You know, hey, they saw your restaurant. Pretty
Hmm.
cool. It would not, doesn't help.
Nope, it does not. So, again, if we go back to what are the key two or three metrics in every step of the sales funnel? And by the way, there's two funnels. And this is the other thing that salespeople, I mean, we've been bagging marketers, but now let's turn to the sales side. Salespeople get a bad rap as well because they're always hunting. They get a kill, they go back around top of the funnel, they want to start closing again. But everyone needs to understand that there's actually two funnels in the sale, and the second funnel is more important than the first. And I'll tell you why. Most people are coming to me as a growth advisor in the wellness and medical space, and they're saying, I just need more leads, more leads, more leads. Do you really? So let me walk you through that. The top of the funnel is obviously new acquisition. We want new leads in the top. We want to get them to a conversion. The most expensive thing in any business, doesn't matter what industry you're in, is acquiring the customer.
Hmm.
And in the case of medical devices, that has a big educational hurdle. So there's a heavy lift to convert a new client. Once you convert that client, that's where the profit is the next funnel, where we expand their cart size, the repeat sales, any integration with other clinics or other verticals inside that organization that we can upsell to. That's really where the profit is because we've already acquired the customer, which is the most expensive part. Now it's about leveraging that customer. Whereas most salespeople, they get the conversion, they then go back up to the top of the funnel and they're hunting again. Really, the job of an account manager also plays a very vital role in this. In fact, that's a dance of three because the transition from a salesperson to an account manager to be able to leverage that account and get the most profit and revenue out of that one client is really important. And that's often forgotten as well. So don't just focus on the top funnel, think about the bottom funnel because that's where the profit is and also the valuation. Because when you're exiting a company, they're going to be looking at things like repeat business, churn of those clients. So your ability to be able to maximize that sale and get more from that client will also add huge amounts of money to your bottom line as far as your enterprise value.
Yeah, I think what's also impacting this is how humans define things. For instance, we say the word creative, and five people might define creative differently. Um, you could say a problem solver is a creative. You could say someone who draws pretty drawings is a creative. And they're just working with different constraints within that world. And sometimes in this world, it all gets tossed together because what's interesting, you made me think of this as you were walking through that. A medical device sales rep, once they convert a surgeon to using their device, they actually turn into a marketer and they don't realize it. They turn into a marketer because now it's about that surgeon increasing his utilization, increasing the overall procedure count or whatever the device is specifically for. And what's interesting is that sales rep still thinks they're doing sales and they're doing marketing. And they're looking at their marketing team as those people, but they're actually doing marketing. But they may not seeing the marketing team as doing marketing. They may be seeing the team as doing pretty painting and drawing on the wall.
I think that's a really interesting point, and one of the first things I do when I look under the hood of a company. So, as a growth advisor, we go in, we have a look at the attributions, what's actually happening across that whole cycle. And what I find is that a lot of people say they have a sales team of seven, for example. And I go, well, you must be killing it if you've got seven dedicated salespeople. What I find though, Zed, is when I look underneath the hood, is that they're actually account managers. They're just selling more to the existing customers. So
Mm.
the first thing I do is say we need to differentiate between the two. And by the way, what makes a good salesperson is completely different to what makes a good account manager. And a salesperson has a very short attention span, but they're very good at getting a yes. We all know the type, right? They're great at that, but they're not great at the follow-ups. They're not great at, making sure that everything's happening in the back office and that that client's getting delivered what they were promised. They tend to move on to the next thing. So separating the two is one of the first things we do. And we need to do that in a way that's really seamless so that when we go from the sale to an account manager, the account manager can take that a lot further. So an account manager really has the traits of relationship building, accountability, building relationships, spotting opportunities to add more value. That's a whole other different profile if we're talking
Mhm.
about predictive index than a salesperson. So having the two together and calling account managers salespeople is one of the first issues I have in the sales department that I try and uncover so that we can go, okay, what is true sales and what is true account management? Because if we measure them both separately, then we can drive both of them together as opposed to driving them as one, which means we get less results.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's very clear. I think I want to kind of bounce off of this topic because there's a lot of things I'm excited to chat with you about. And there are people right now whose job is to make sure that the SEO on their website is working really well. And in the medical device space, there's two aspects of this. They may have a website that is specific for physicians, and it is how they may communicate with a physician about their technology. And then many times those device companies also have a patient-facing uh, website so
Mhm.
that a patient self-selects. They identify, ooh, you know what? This is an issue I have. I didn't know there was this technology. Let me look into it. I'm curious what your opinion is about those people who are typing away drastically right now, fixing their quote unquote SEO.
Look, I don't know that SEO agencies are really going to like what I have to say, but dodgy backlinks, I'm sorry, it's a thing of the past. Google is way smarter than that. It's smarter than probably the two of us put together as well. And then we have AI. So, going and creating content that gets put in places where no one visits for the sake of ranking doesn't work anymore. Domain authority, SEO is all about domain authority. And to be honest, in most cases, what we do is when we look at that, we say, okay, yes, there's on-page SEO work that needs to be done, which is really important, but that's sort of a short-term project, which you might revisit every 12 months to make sure that your score is high. But the ongoing content strategy that feeds SEO really needs to be a video first strategy. And it needs to be based on GEO, which is generative engine optimization. And I think that's the real shift and opportunity that a lot of clients that I speak to aren't even aware of yet. And it's land grab. I mean, you remember when SEO came out. I mean, if you were able to own that space online, you were winning for the next 10 years, as opposed to everybody else who had to pay to play. So, for us for SEO, yes, there's on-page work, but the ongoing content needs to be video based because YouTube is still the largest search engine. And we all know that the omni-channel, the social media channels reward video over still content and still videos, still photos. So, shifting your strategy to long form, micro granular video first content is really important. And I'll take you through why it is because yes, video ranks higher, but it also feeds everything underneath it. So if you start with, say, a 1 hour deep interview with one of your experts, which is really important to get that micro granular content, because that is what the LLMs and Google and the like are looking for. But what's great about that is now you have content for your YouTube channel that's long form. And we're not sitting around and saying, ooh, what should be the theme and the creative idea for this interview? No, we're going straight to data first. What are people looking at SEMrush and those sorts of tools? What is our ideal client looking for and searching for and answers? That forms the questions that we ask in those videos. So we do these videos, we get nice 10, 15-minute deep expert videos on topics. They become your YouTube channel content. And then from there, you can use great AI tools that'll splinter that into short form content that then feeds your social channels. Then you can transcribe that really quickly with a click of a button with AI, and then you can go into other tools like AnyWord and you can generate lots of written form content. So starting with video first is my recommendation around SEO. And if you are looking for domain authority, it's a pay to play environment. Why spend a fortune with a PR agency trying to pitch when you can actually buy SEO? You can buy an article on USA Today, for example. A lot of people don't realize that. And unlike pay per click, it's going to be around for a lot longer than in your feed for 5 seconds. So paying for SEO and then shifting your focus to content that is GEO friendly because we went from Google Doctor to ChatGPT, or as I call it, Charlie Doctor. Everyone's now going to ChatGPT with uploading their test results and asking them. We want to make sure that your device is ranking, that it is referencing your content, your long form microgranular content as part of the answer so that when they get to the end of their lollipop and they say, okay, I'm convinced this is what I need to do. What is the best device? You guys are the first ones that come up. Now, a lot of people struggle with this because it's a very heavy content lift. But when you partner with someone like what you do, you can do that content at scale. It's not about one video a month. We're talking 5 to 10 videos a month. How do we 10x our content without 10xing our budget and be more strategic about our content strategy, starting with data first and working back?
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to take us down a path that's going to cause some people to wince a bit. Um, in the industry, there is a lot of grandfathered in agencies where this award-winning agencies, award-winning for their creative. And when you
Pretty
say,
portfolios that do nothing for profit.
yes.
The
So,
three Ps.
yes, the three Ps, I love that. I'm stealing that or borrowing it. You know,
R&D, rip off and duplicate.
there you go. But this is what people heard when you said video, they instantly saw $500,000 as a budget. They instantly saw $1 million as a budget because there are companies right now, and that's what they're spending because they're relying on the award-winning PPP agency. And it's
Give it
like
to
it's so
charity.
yeah.
You're better off giving it to charity. It's a waste of money. Polished videos don't even work online. They don't. I mean, if you're doing a TV campaign or a Super Bowl ad, sure. But most people I know need to support their salespeople so that when they're out there, they have a digital footprint that helps with explaining what it is that you do. And that needs to be very much expert-based content. It needs to be unpolished. In fact, just a Zoom like this is perfect. In
Yep.
fact, just somebody talking about their subject matter expertise and going deep on that, because this is the EAT strategy. And it's an EAT with a double E, experience, expertise, authority, and trusted. That's the sort of content we want to be producing. And 500,000, imagine how much user-generated content or podcast style content we could create video wise, or case studies with talking to patients and them experience sharing their journey and their transformation and how it helped them. They're the sorts of things we need to be capturing at scale. So $500,000 can go a very long way when you're utilizing tools and you don't need the lighting, you don't need the 10 people. It's just conversations. And
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 what's
that
funny,
resonates more
yeah,
online. So why would you go the other
and
route?
TV. I would say the people who spend more on TV is silly also.
I
It's
agree.
because it's all about the emotional connection. And, you know, it drives me nuts because the industry right now is let's put together a focus group and then let's ask a bunch of questions that we already know how they're going to answer because focus groups are dumb. And then let's use that information to create a really expensive commercial and then spend millions of dollars running it and then use vanity metrics to just keep myself behind a moat of safety.
Yeah, but that's got
That's
nothing
my
to do with
rant.
the client. That
I
has
know.
to do with their portfolio. They just want something pretty in their portfolio. And this is why, I tend to butt heads with creatives is because I don't give them the luxury of a 2 week offsite to figure out what our campaign is going to be. I'm like, you get 2 hours, and
Yeah.
that's being gracious. And you can come up with a few initial ideas. And before you even get into your creative little bubble and start putting pen to paper, as they say, or creating something visual, we're going to go straight to the tools and we're going to put in that campaign and we're going to look at using AI and $6 billion worth of current ad spend. We can upload the customer avatar. We can type in a quick rough idea of what our campaign idea is, and it will give us an instant click-through rate and success of that campaign. And, I've never seen a creative get over 40%. They think their idea is the most amazing idea on the planet. I'm like, okay, let's test it against the market and current spend and what's actually getting clicks, and they never get past 40%. And then with a click of a button, you can say, okay, rewrite this and give us other ideas that are a 90 plus percent click through rate. Once we get to that point, yes, you can go back to the creative, but again, we've got to utilize the tools to create lots of content. I'm not talking 3 campaigns and let's split test 3 campaigns and throw 10 grand at each of them. That's the old agency model. The new model is very much about using the tools, the AI tools, finding out, getting past 90%, then doing 20, 30 campaigns, split testing all of them to see what the winner is. And I can do that in under 2 weeks. These guys are still sitting around having, their creative moments and thought processes and focus groups. This is why I'm fast growth, is because while you're all sitting around fornicating, I've already split 30 campaigns. I know what my winner is and I'm driving it because it's build, optimize, and then scale. And I can do that in a very short time. So your ability to be able to understand the process and have a really good process for how we test campaigns and how we optimize our spend is important. And that goes for both, organic content and paid content. But if there's no process there, you're leaving your creative and your revenue drivers, you're leaving it in the hands of a creative. And I've rarely met any of them that are commercial.
I love it. I have a new slug line for you. It's either it's EGS or it's Tamara. Uh, we don't fornicate around.
I'm an Aussie. Yeah, I tell it a bit straight, but yeah,
No,
I think
it.
creatives that have data, that are obsessed with data, those are unicorns. And they're the sorts of people you want in your business. And
Yeah.
I know that's the sort of people that you have inside your company. I mean, yes, you specialize in marketing for the sector, but you're very commercial and you're very much minded, very clear about data as well. And they're the sorts of partnerships you need and the sorts of people we need in these companies.
Yeah. It's the thing is, it all just makes sense. If you owned a plumbing company in 1960 something, your SEO was make sure you start your business name with an A because the yellow pages, hey, Al's Plumbing. If you named your business Zach's Plumbing in the 60s, that was a bad idea.
Yeah,
SEO came
Zed's
around.
plumbing wouldn't work very well.
No, no.
No.
But now people are doing that. They're doing that by ignoring GEO. They're naming their business, starting it with a Z in the 60s by ignoring GEO. And I think there's value in realizing it's not that you're not doing something good, it's you're purposely choosing something that works worse.
Well, and people talk about themselves, and no one really cares at the top of the funnel. At the top of the funnel, it's 90% value, 10% suggestive sale. So a lot of people are doing the opposite. So I think the important thing with all that we're saying is once you figure out what works, you need to put it into an SOP so that you can scale it. Predictable revenue is really important. There's three ways to increase the value of a business. And this is what the exec team and your board actually cares about and your CEO and founders. There's three key drivers. The first one is healthy EBITDA and profit, obviously. And that comes from AI, optimization, automation, offshoring, those sorts of things. The second one is predictable revenue models. Do we have a repeatable, scalable revenue model? So I met someone recently who was also in the medical space, and they said, "Oh yeah, we own our growth." I'm like, "Okay, talk me through your predictable revenue because it needs to be a dial we can turn up and down at any time." And 40% of their revenue was coming through Amazon. I'm like, I'm sorry, you don't own your customer. Jeff owns your customer. So that's not predictable. We can't go out to those people and reach out and say, hey, by the way, we now have this product offering, or, we've got this special, or whatever, you're trying to talk to them about. So owning your growth is really important, which is your predictable revenue. That takes discipline and it takes SOPs. So that's why we created EGS, Enterprise Growth Systems, is when something works, we turn it into a system. We have run sheets, we have scorecards, we have non-vanity metrics, which is all the conversion metrics. And we know very clearly the 8 steps and the metrics at each as best practices. Then we turn that up. And it's only once the 8 have been optimized, we start turning that up so we don't have bleed, in pay-per-click and advertising and acquisition bleed. We start turning that up, then we go to the next vertical or the next campaign. So SOPs are critical and you want plug and play ones. And most businesses I go into, they just go from campaign to campaign. There's no real strategy. They're kind of spread thin. They go wide, not deep. So the discipline is to really get the metrics first, the non-vanity metrics, conversion metrics optimized, then drive that really deep only when that is scalable do we move on to the next campaign. So that's the campaign side of a business. They need to be ongoing, but they can't be broad. We want to pick one or two and go very deep on those. Most businesses that I see that get to really good valuations at exit, they're pretty simple and they've had the discipline to do the same thing over and
Yeah.
over again. They go very deep, they own a particular market, and then they usually are in one or two others that are complementary, and they've started to drive those, but they can demonstrate that they have a repeatable,
Mhm.
scalable sales process. And then they can also get valuation based on these other verticals. Whereas most people are just, how do I get more revenue? They create more products, they try and sell more. That's going broad and that's not a great strategy because you end up mediocre at everything. And it also doesn't help the marketing because we have to talk about too many things and it confuses people. So get very clear, what is our take to market strategy? Go very deep and narrow on that. Be the subject matter experts. Position yourself as EAT online. Only when you own that will I give you the courtesy of saying, as your growth advisor, we can now go and play in another pool. But until we have that established, I rarely I rarely recommend that we do five things badly.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine buying a car where the gas pedal wasn't linear in its acceleration, where it just randomly, oh, now I'm going 30, now I'm going 5. You wouldn't buy that car. Why would someone buy
It's a
that
good
business?
analogy. I feel like everyone's got dodgem cars. Do you have those, right? The little ones that run around and just hit into each other.
Yeah,
Kind of a
absolutely.
good,
Bumper
that's all
cars,
the
but yeah,
departments trying to figure out what are we selling, what are we doing?
right. No, that's really good. Man, this is
Bumper
fun.
cars. I think you call
Um,
them bumper cars.
Bumper cars, yep, that's right.
Yep. Yep.
Whiplash and fun. Um,
Hmm.
so thinking of EGS, if someone is, how do they work with you as a medical device company? What are they struggling with today where the EGS system helps them?
So have you heard of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating Systems?
Yep.
So that's a plug and play how to operate your business in order to scale it effectively and for everyone to be on the same page. We use EOS as well. We love it. But there's no G in that. They don't have a growth system. So this is the same thing. It's a plug and play growth system that we come in. An EGS facilitator will come in and set up all the systems and processes for the real metrics so that we can have scorecards on every activity and a really great content engine room that we can do at scale. We've got all of those run sheets. We come in, we plug those into the business, we set them up, we get to those magic numbers where they start to scale, and then we step away because it's really important that they own their growth and they know their numbers
Yeah.
internally. So, they don't have a dependency on us. So it's a system in order for them to be able to track and run campaigns and content at scale without them being the bumper cars that are all tripping all over each other. It's a very clear system. And that was missing for me as a highly commercial, I have a venture capital background, right? Um, so as somebody who did a marketing degree and then went into venture capital, that was the piece that was missing. Marketing never, that the departments in marketing and even in sales, they would have one great salesperson who would hold the baton because they were the best ones, so they could dictate whatever they wanted, red jelly beans, all that sort of stuff. That's not a predictable revenue model. We need to be able to bring people on board in sales very quickly so that they can hit the ground running. We don't need to wait 18 months to see if they're a keeper or not. So, creating SOPs around sales, around marketing that are in-house that we can measure is critical. Plus, it also helps at due diligence. When a lot of the businesses that we work with are looking to exit, they're preparing for a liquidity and they want to maximize their value. So when they look under the hood, once they've got, say, two or three LOIs, which is always the goal, letters of intent for those of you who don't have the VC background. So once they've got those three LOIs, what's interesting is when they do the due diligence and they see that they have a dial and they have a process for how they scale it, they always end up fighting over it because it becomes a strategic buy for them because they're looking at those SOPs and going, wow, they've actually created a predictable, repeatable revenue model. We can apply that to other things in our portfolio.
Yep.
Or
Leverage.
we've got the real numbers. So if we were to invest this capital and turn this
Hmm.
dial up, they've already started two other verticals. We could drive those two just as deep. We know the size of that market. With capital, we can drive those deep and triple the value of this business. So they start thinking strategically about that business and then they end up fighting over it, which gets
Better.
the seller a much better price.
Yep.
So your ability to be able to demonstrate predictable revenue is so important. And it's the one thing that most people leave on the table. They never get that right. Or they have those one or two key salespeople that they pray don't ever leave them, which is not a strategy. It's key
No.
person risk, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, if there are people listening and they're interested in learning more, they can go to egrowthsystems.com and see what it would be like to have a EGS facilitator, which I think
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
smart.
They can book in a complimentary 1 hour growth advisory session where we can look through those key metrics, see where you're at, see what your goals are, work back from that, and really make a plan for how we turn this into a scalable business.
That's awesome. Tamara, I really appreciate you joining us today. This has been Fun conversation for me, and I know that the audience will walk away with a lot of great insights.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's always
Ab-
great to debunk sales and marketing so we can all win.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you
Thank you.
next time on the Medical Sales Accelerator podcast.